right, so we're diving deep into Brave New World this time.
Huxley's classic.
Yeah, we've got spark notes and a pretty detailed synopsis to guide us through it.
It's a dense one.
For sure. But I think our listeners are ready to tackle this dystopia head on, right? A world obsessed with engineered happiness and...
where individuality is practically extinct.
Exactly. So let's jump right in.
All right, the story kicks off in this place called the Central London Hatchery and Conditioning Center.
Catchy name.
Right. But it basically sums up the whole deal. Human reproduction is totally industrialized.
No more like families or natural birds.
Get on. It's all embryos created and grown in these artificial wombs.
Wow.
And if that wasn't wild enough, they use these processes, Volkanovsky and Podsnap.
I've heard of those vaguely.
Yeah, they're basically like mass production techniques for humans, making thousands of genetically identical people.
So it's like a factory, not a nursery.
Exactly. It's all about efficiency and like churning out these people.
And then there's the caste system too, right?
Yeah, right. They divide everyone into 5 castes. Alpha, beta, gamma, delta, and epsilon. Each one has like a specific role in society.
Like a predetermined job.
Pretty much.
And that's all decided like right when they're born.
Yeah.
Or I guess decanted.
From the moment they're decanted, yeah, and then they get specific conditioning for those jobs.
Wow, so the alphas, those are the top dogs.
Yeah, the alphas are at the top. They're bred for intelligence, leadership, that sort of thing.
And the epsilons are...
They're kind of at the bottom, designed for like the menial work, you know?
So it's like super rigid.
It is, yeah. Chapter 2 kind of jumps ahead a few years and you actually see the conditioning in action.
Oh, right, they're using hypnopedia, right? The sleep teaching thing.
Exactly, that's how they instill like the world state's values in all the kids.
And even playtime, they manipulate that too.
Yep, totally engineered to reinforce their future roles.
That's like they're programming them from birth.
And eliminating any chance of free thought, which is exactly what the world state wants.
Right, stability above all else.
That's their motto. And then in chapter 3...
we meet Mustapha Mond.
Yep, one of the world controllers, a pretty important guy.
Right, he's like the big boss.
Yeah, he explains the whole history of this crazy world.
So like how they got there.
Yeah, he talks about these events they call the 9 Years' War, like a period of total chaos and destruction, and how the pursuit of like individual happiness and freedom
actually led to that.
Exactly. So their solution was to engineer it out of existence.
Wow. Okay, chapter 4 brings us to
Lenina Crown.
Oh, right. She's a beta.
A very attractive beta.
And there's Bernard Marx, too.
Another important character. He's an alpha plus, but he's kind of struggling with all the social norms, you know?
Doesn't really fit in.
Not really. He's uncomfortable with the casual hookups and the lack of, like, real emotional depth.
It's that everyone belongs to everyone else thing, right?
Yeah, he can't really get on board with that. And it drives him to, like, to seek something more, you know?
Right. There's also Helmholtz Watson.
Oh, yeah. He's introduced in this chapter, too, another alpha plus who feels limited by the world state, though his reasons are a little different from Bernard.
Okay, interesting. Chapter 5 kind of shifts gears. We get into the topic of...
death.
Right, which is handled very differently in the world state, I guess.
Very differently. They've basically eliminated grief and mourning.
So kids are, like, conditioned to not be sad about it.
Yeah, they're taught from a young age that death is just a natural, even pleasant thing.
That's kind of, I don't know, it's just weird to think about.
It is. They've removed the emotional sting completely. The chapter ends with Lenina and Henry Foster.
Another character to keep track of.
Right. They're talking about their trip to a savage reservation.
What's that?
It's like this place where people still live in what the world state considers primitive conditions.
Like the old ways.
Exactly.
So like stepping back in time?
Kind of, yeah. And that's where they're headed.
To see how the other half lives.
Exactly.
And this is where it really gets interesting, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because in chapter 6...
Bernard and Lenina actually arrive at the reservation.
And I bet they're in for a shock.
Oh, definitely. It's a huge culture shock.
What's it like?
Well, they encounter things they've never seen before. Dirt, disease, aging things that have been totally eliminated in the world state.
I bet.
And it's not just that. They even witness this violent religious ritual that leaves them horrified.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's a completely alien world to them.
Okay, and it's at the reservation that they meet John.
Right. John's a young man who was born on the reservation.
But he doesn't quite fit in there either, does he?
No, he's kind of ostracized because of his mother's unconventional behavior and her connection to the world state.
So he's like between two worlds.
Exactly. He doesn't belong in either one.
Okay, and we learn more about his mom, Linda, in Chapter 7, right?
Right. So Linda, she was a beta from the world state, but she was accidentally left behind on the reservation after some kind of accident.
Oh, wow.
And she raised John on all these stories about this other place.
The world state.
Yeah, a world of comfort and pleasure that John dreams of seeing for himself.
So he's kind of fascinated by it,
Totally.
even though he's never actually been there,
Right. And that fascination is kind of what drives Bernard's plan in Chapter 8.
which is,
Well, Bernard's feeling more and more alienated, and he wants recognition, so he hatches this plan to bring John and Linda back to the world state.
to show them off, basically.
Yeah, hoping it'll cause a sensation and boost his social standing.
So John's like, his ticket to fame?
In a way, yeah.
That's pretty messed up.
His.
Sounds like things are about to get interesting.
They definitely are. Chapter 9's where things really start to shift. Bernard gets back to the world state, brings John and Linda with him.
Big scandal, right?
Huge, especially for the director of the hatchery.
Yeah.
Linda reveals that, well, he's John's father.
Oh, wow, that's got to be awkward.
Totally. He ends up resigning, like total disgrace.
So Bernard gets what he wanted,
Yeah.
a little bit of the spotlight.
For a while, yeah. He's loving the attention, using John the Savage to climb the social ladder.
But John's not really playing along, is he? In Chapter 10, we see that.
No, not at all. He's got all these deeply held beliefs, shaped by Shakespeare and his upbringing on the reservation.
Like, and those beliefs clash big time with the world state's whole vibe.
Exactly. He doesn't get their casual relationships or the whole soma thing.
That instant happiness drug.
Right. He's just completely disillusioned by it all.
He falls for Lenina, though, doesn't he?
He does. But his idea of love is a lot more, I don't know, romantic, deeper than anything Lenina understands.
They're just from completely different worlds.
Exactly. That's the tragedy of it, I think. By Chapter 11, Bernard's popularity's fading.
Because people are tired of John.
Pretty much, yeah. Joe refuses to play the game, So he ends up more and more isolated.
Rejecting the world state's whole, superficiality.
Exactly, which
Yeah.
just makes his situation even worse, right?
Yeah, trapped in a world he doesn't understand and can't really be a part of.
Totally. And then, Chapter 12, things get even tougher for John.
What happens?
He gets news about Linda.
His mom.
Yeah, she never really adjusted to life back in the world state.
She got hooked on the soma, right?
Yeah, and she's dying.
That's gotta be rough for John.
It is. He goes to see her at the hospital for the dying, and he's appalled by how they deal with death.
Like no emotion, right?
Exactly. It's all very clinical and detached. And then he sees these kids, being conditioned to think of death as a good thing, like a happy event. And that's when he just...
Snaps.
Yeah, kind of. Chapter 13, all that grief and anger boils over.
He tries to start a rebellion, right?
He does. He throws Soma out the window, telling the Deltas to, break free from their conditioning, experience real emotions.
But it doesn't go so well.
No, not at all. It's quickly shut down by the guards. They use Soma vapor to calm everyone down.
So much for free will.
Right. Bernard and Helmholtz get caught up in it all, too, and they're all arrested, brought before Mustapha Mond.
There's got to be intense.
Oh, it is. Chapter 14, it's like the ultimate showdown, The rebel versus the authority figure. Mond and John, they have this whole philosophical debate about the world state's values.
So we finally get to hear why they think this is the best way to live.
Right. John's arguing for freedom, art, religion, all that stuff, even the painful parts of life.
The stuff the world state has eliminated?
Exactly. But Mond, he thinks stability and happiness are more important, even if it means sacrificing individuality and freedom.
So it's a trade-off, in his mind.
Yeah, he thinks they've achieved utopia by getting rid of war, poverty, suffering, all of it.
It's a chilling argument, isn't it? Makes you think about what we're willing to give up for a little comfort and security.
Yeah, I think that's the point Huxley's trying to make.
So what happens to Bernard and Helmholtz after that whole rebellion thing?
Well, Mond decides to exile them, sends them off to islands where they can't disrupt the world state's, perfect order.
Because their ideas are too dangerous.
Basically, yeah. Helmholtz is actually kind of okay with it.
He wants to write, right?
Yeah, he sees it as a chance to, finally focus on his work without distractions.
Makes sense. He was always the more, cerebral one.
Definitely. Bernard, on the other hand,
Not so thrilled.
terrified, actually. Which isn't surprising. He always wanted to fit in, be accepted.
Never really found his place, did he? Even in a world designed to give everyone a place.
Nope. But John, he's a different story. He refuses exile.
He wants no part of that world.
Exactly. But going back to the reservation isn't an option either.
So he's stuck, kinda?
Totally. He ends up finding this deserted lighthouse, tries to escape there.
Hide away from it all?
Yeah, and he tries to purify himself, like through self-flagellation and hard labor.
That's intense.
It is. He's trying to make sense of it all, you know? Reconcile his beliefs with the reality he's trapped in.
Find some inner peace, maybe.
So something like that, yeah. And for a little while in chapter 16, it seems like he actually finds it.
Some peace and quiet away from the world state chaos.
Right. But of course it doesn't last.
What happens?
Some Delta workers stumble across him.
While he's whipping himself.
Yeah, and word spreads fast.
The media gets a hold of it.
Oh, yeah, it's a frenzy. Reporters, curious world staters, they all flock to the lighthouse, want to see the savage for themselves.
Spectacle.
Totally. Even Lenina shows up.
And that's not good.
Nope, it just makes things worse for John. The crowd, they start demanding that he whip himself, and I don't know, maybe it's a moment of weakness, maybe despair, but he gives in.
Yeah.
He participates in this orgy, too, something he despises.
It's like he's losing himself, isn't it?
Completely. The next morning, he's overwhelmed with shame, guilt.
Can't live with what he's done.
Exactly, and he takes his own life.
It's such a tragedy the way it ends. This guy who wanted something real, something meaningful, destroyed by the very world that promised him happiness.
It's a powerful warning, I think, about the dangers of sacrificing individuality, freedom, all of that for the sake of a comfortable, stable existence.
A manufactured happiness.
Right, exactly. Huxley's really making us think, isn't he? About our own world, our own choices.
For sure. Are we headed down the same path? Embracing convenience, comfort, at the cost of, I don't know, our humanity?
It's a question worth asking ourselves, listener. What kind of world do we want? One where everything's controlled, predictable, maybe even superficially happy.
Or a world where we can be ourselves, experience the full range of human emotions, the good and the bad?
The choice is ours.
Heavy stuff. This deep dive has given us a lot to think about.
It has.
The future's in our hands. Let's try to choose wisely.